Good morning, all. So, in this lecture session, we'll be going to see about oroantral fistula, an important topic. Um, this is the one of the most common complication which can occur after extraction of the teeth. So, you should be having a knowledge of that. In case if it occurs, how to manage oroantral fistula. So before going into oroantral fistula, we'll be seeing about maxillary sinus because that's where the oroantral fistula occurs. So you should know about maxillary sinus. It is basically described by Nathaniel Highmore in 1651. That's why it's called as antrum of Highmore. You have two maxillary sinus. That is, it's a paired sinus on either side of the face. You can see that on the picture, and it is the largest among the paranasal air sinus. You have few more sinuses there, and the sphenoidal sinus, ethmoid sinus, frontal sinus. Among these things, the maxillary sinus is the largest one, and these sinuses communicate freely through the lateral wall of the nose. You can see the other sinuses also in the picture there, and the volume of the sinus of maxillary ones ranges roughly between 15 to 30 ml. It opens and drains into the middle meatus of the uh, lateral wall of the nose. If coming to the anatomy, if you see, it is roughly pyramidal in shape. It has a base, it has an apex, and it has four walls. You can see that in the picture. The base is formed by the lateral wall of the nose, and the apex laterally projects into the zygomatic process of the maxilla. You have to imagine this three-dimensionally. And the four walls, the anterior wall is formed by the facial surface of maxilla, posterior wall is against by the maxilla, infratemporal surface of body of maxilla, and the roof is formed by the floor of the orbit, and floor is formed by alveolar process of maxilla. Coming to the blood supply, the arterial supply is by facial, maxillary, and greater palatine arteries. Venous supply, usually the venous things accompany the arteries. They drain into the anterior facial vein and subsequently to the pterygoid plexus of the veins. And nerve supply is from the branches of maxillary division of trigeminal nerve, anterior, middle, and posterior superior alveolar nerve. Lymphatic drainage again from the submandibular and deep cervical lymph nodes. Now, with this brief introduction about maxillary sinus, we will be seeing what is the oroantral fistula. Basically, oroantral fistula is an epithelialized pathological communication. These words are important. Epithelialized pathological communication that exists between oral cavity and antral cavity. This is not a natural communication, it's a pathological one. It occurs secondary to something else. Okay, so you can see the various pictures showing the oroantral fistula, which can occur between the oral cavity and the antral cavity, that is the maxillary sinus. So what are the causes? Okay, what all the causes of oroantral fistula or communication? What is the difference between communication and fistula? I will tell you in the subsequent slides. So extraction of the teeth, it's the most common cause. Destruction of portion of floor of the sinus by periapical lesions is the other cause. Perforation of floor of the sinus with injurious use of instrument. This is an iatrogenic cause. Extensive trauma to the face. Chronic infections such as osteomyelitis can cause oroantral communication. Destruction of maxilla in syphilis such as gamma also can cause. Infected maxillary implants. Malignant diseases such as malignant granuloma also can cause oroantral communication. Among this, the extraction of the teeth, that is the posterior teeth from premolars to molars, the most vulnerable are the second premolar and the first molar. Okay, so we have to be very careful. Chances of oroantral communication can be there, and we have to check that whether the communication has been there or not. Okay, so if in case the roots are getting involved into the floor of the sinus, the communication can occur. So there are three types are there. The most common, as I told, is the alveolar one due to the extraction. I told the extraction is the most common cause. So the most common type is also alveolar, usually following the dental extraction. Sublabial arises as a complication of Caldwell-Luke operation. Palatal arises due to the malignancy, trauma, and maxillectomy things. So now we will see the difference between oroantral communication versus oroantral fistula. What is a communication? Basically, it's an unnatural communication existing between the oral cavity and the maxillary sinus. But what is a fistula? Again, if a fistula is an epithelialized pathological communication. This is the difference. Oroantral is the fresh one. Fistula is an established one. Here, the tract will be having an epithelialization communication between the oral cavity and maxillary sinus. It develops when oroantral communication fails to close spontaneously and it remains patterned and get epithelialized. There is a migration of oral epithelium into the defect. The epithelialization usually occurs when the perforation persists for at least 48 to 72 hours. Within few days, the fistula get organized, and with the epithelialization of fistulous tract, osteitis of the surrounding bone margins, presence of the foreign bodies or development of sinusitis, spontaneous healing is hampered, which may result in chronic fistula formation. Now coming to the main differences. Already I told one difference in the previous slide. Now coming to the main differences. Here, as I told before, fresh oroantral communication, and here on the fistula side, it's an established established fistula. Here on the communication side, escape of fluids from the nose. Here, purulent nasal discharge. In the communication side, it can be an escape of air from the mouth to nose. Here, popping out of antral polyp. There, in communication, excruciating pain can be there. Here, post nasal drip with the discharge trickling down pharynx with a small foul smelling can occur. Here, epistaxis, it can be unilateral. Enhanced column of air changes in voice resonance can be there in communication. So to remember this, always remember this mnemonic: 5 E's and 3 P's. 5 E's are there on the communication side, and 3 P's starting with purulent, popping, and postnasal drips are there in the oroantral fistula side. So remember 5 E's and 3 P's. Now, if the fistula occurs, how to confirm that? There are various tests are there to confirm that. We will see one by one. One is the nose blowing test, performed by moderately forceful attempt at exhalation against a closed airway. Remember, as if you are blowing a balloon. Okay, that is the best example I can say here. Usually done by closing one's mouth, pinching one nose shut while pressing out. And other method is, you can see escape of air bubbles with the blood from the extraction socket. Since the communication is there, you can see some of the air bubbles, because maxillary sinus, you see it is an air cavity. And so if the communication is established, through that communication, through that opening, the air bubbles can come, and the air can come, and which can mingle with the blood, and you can see that in the extraction socket. And you can again saw the fogging of the mirror again due to the airflow. And in case some cases, unilateral epistaxis, okay, can be there. If nozzle of the suction is placed near the newly created fistula, similar sound like blowing across the mouth of an empty bottle can be heard. But however, this can be heard only in case of healthy sinus. Patient is made to rinse mouth preferably with a colored solution. This is another method to diagnose. So if there is a communication or fistula is present, you can see the nasal regurgitation. Okay, you can see the flow of the backflow of the fluid through the nose. Now we have seen about the definition of oroantral fistula, the differences, the etiologies, and now we'll see the management. That the most important part. If there is a oroantral fistula, how to manage them? There are various ways are there. First, we will see what is the main purpose. Okay, to protect the sinus from oral microbial flora, to prevent escape of fluids and other contents across communication, and to eliminate existing antral pathology. Basically, you have to prevent the communication between the oral and the antral cavity. That is the main aim here. So treatment of long-standing fistula, usually surgical closure is the only choice, and there are various ways of achieving that. You can use local flaps, and all these flaps have been tried and have been reported in the literature. Buccal flap, advancement, palatal pedicle flap, these are the most common things which have been which will be done clinically. Apart from that, you have Mosier, Berger sliding, submucosal connective tissue, palatal pedicle flap, anteriorly based palatal flaps, combination flaps are there, buccal pad of fat is there. So a lot of choices are also there. So we will see the other options what is available. The distant flaps basically is a tongue flap, nasolabial skin flap, Temporal is muscle flap. Anteriorly based buccinator myomucosal island flap. Basically, the local flap is the present, which is present very near to the vicinity, and distant flaps are little bit away from the vicinity. And grafts, you can have autogenous graft, monocortical grafts, all those things. Autogenous graft is nothing but it is taken from the same species, and the allogenous is from the same species, but it won't be genetically identical. Xenograft is taken from the different species, but from animal to the human. Okay. The other way of closure is intraseptal alveolectomy. We will see about that. And the last way is the alloplastic materials. You can use a lot of alloplastic material. When you can't use autogenous material, when there is possibility is not there for autogenous, then you go for the alloplastic one. Gold plate, gold foil, all these materials are there. This is a summary of what I told, various materials used for closure. Autogenous, again, autogenous is the preferred one. Usually autogenous is the most preferred one, and most of the time we'll be doing that only. And you can use through soft tissue and bone grafts also. Soft tissue, again, local and distant. As I told, local you have few options, and distal you have few options. Again, you can achieve this through the closure through the bone grafts. Again, allogenous, you have options like fibrin glue and durameter. Xenografts, from animal to the man. Synthetic materials are there, that is alloplast. You can have gold, aluminum, all materials, hydroxyapatite, all those things. Other techniques are all there. So we will see the most common thing, the local flaps. The buccal advancement flap is the most popular technique in closure of oral antral fistula. It is described by von Rechermann in 1936. You can see this picture. In the picture A, there is an oroantral fistula. In B, there is the deepithelialization is done. Okay, removal of the fistulous tract and deepithelialization is done, and there is a release incision given on the both sides, and the flap is being reflected. You can see the further reflection of the flap by undermining by scoring the periosteum to facilitate more advancement here in the C picture. And in D, you can see the advanced buccal flap and placed on the oroantral fistula and closed and sutured. Basically, you should give the LA and excision of the fistulous tract, as I told before. Two divergent incision, you can see in the picture, made on each side of the orifice down till the bone with the help of BP blade number 15. And you can advance the buccal flap by making horizontal incision in the periosteum. Again, you can see that in the picture. And if there is any hemorrhage, you have to arrest that and close with sutures, and you have to give the medications, antibiotic, analgesics. The most important thing, you have to give specific instructions to these patients. They have to avoid sneezing, avoid forceful goggling, avoid exploring the site with the tongue, restriction of diet, like usually they have to take the soft diet, and basically they have to avoid the negative pressure. Okay, they should not suck with straw, they should not smoke, all those things. The negative pressure will cause a problem there in the fistulous region, so they have to avoid that. The specific instruction has to be given. So again, the same thing, buccal advancement flap. You can see all the 3 steps in the same picture there on the left side, and the clinical picture how it is has been closed. So disadvantages are reduces buccal vestibular height and does not provide a bony base. These are all the problems. For example, if this patient after the healing, if it comes for the denture, the vestibular height will be reduced in these cases. That is that's one of the disadvantage. Now coming to the next technique, palatal pedicle flap. It has been devised by Ashley in 1939. Here, the palatal flap is rotated across the fistula so that the suture line rests on the sound bone on buccal side of the orifice. You can see the palatal flap there. It is based on the greater palatine artery. It is an axial flap. Whenever a flap is based on a particular artery, it is called as axial flap. So it has been rotated and advanced and kept over the fistula. What is the advantages? When compared to the buccal flap, what we saw in the previous slides, when compared to that, this palatal tissue is more bulkier and thicker, and more abundant blood supply, since it is based on an artery, rest on the sound bone on buccal side, Do not reduce the vestibular height. That is one of the most important advantage what you don't have on the buccal technique. And you can see that in the pictures. Disadvantages: when careless, there is a chance of injuring the greater palatine artery. Since the flap is based on an artery, you should be very careful in harvesting. If not, the injury can happen to the artery, resulting in more bleeding. Now, combination. We have seen the buccal and the palatal. Now you can use these both the flaps in combination also. That is also been reported in literature. Both buccal and palatal flaps are used for closure. Buccal flap is elevated and reversed, which sutured with the palatal margin. Palatal flap is rotated and placed in usual manner and sutured using the 30 chromic catgut. Here, the raw surfaces of both the flaps are placed against each other, which ensures double layer closure. An acrylic splint can be afforded to protect during mastication, and advantages are tension-free closure, abutment of raw connective tissue to raw connective tissue to promote rapid cellular proliferation and healing. Since both the raw surfaces are on together and they are kept on the fistulous region, more rapid cellular proliferation healing can happen, and can be more strength and bulk to the on the oroventral fistula region. Prevent so the chance for the fistula to reoccur or the flap to dehaze is comparatively less when you use a combination flap. Double layer closure, as I told before, it gives an additional strength there. So you can see that in the pictures there, how a double layer closure is done. So both the flaps are rotated and kept and sutured together. And coming to the next technique, we saw about the buccal flap, palatal flap, its combination. Now we are coming to the next technique. We can use a buccal pad of fat for closure of oroventral fistula. So buccal pad of fat is a rounded and biconvex structure surrounded by a slight capsule and located inside both masticatory spaces. Helps in muscular motion and contribute to external morphology of space. Supplied by maxillary, superficial, temporal, and facial arteries. Therefore, it takes the axial graft pattern when removed from its plane. Due to its anatomical location, it is very useful for reconstruction of maxillary defects from premolar to the posterior tuberosity. Basically, this buccal pad of fat gives the bulkiness to the cheek region. Okay, so you can see the buccal pad of fat in the picture. It's more usually it's more prominent in the children. It gives the puffiness. Okay. So the procedure: horizontal incisions made on the vestibule of molar region over superior maxilla. Careful manipulation of flap in order to maintain its thin capsule, and mechanical suction should be avoided because the fat will be absorbed into the suction. You should avoid the suctioning there. Once the flap, the buccal pad of fat is exposed. Further blunt dissection is preferable with two vascular clamps, one to gently pull the emergent part and other to dissect the oral mucosa surrounding the buccal pad of fat. You can see this on the pictures there, how the buccal pad of fat is slowly pulled out and sutured on the fistulous region. Okay. So sutures placed, it should be tension free to avoid partial necrosis. Epithelialization process starts during first week and completes in 30 to 40 days. So the same thing, how the buccal pad of the fat is slowly pulled out and sutured on the fistulous region. Same thing again, you can see the clinical picture, how the buccal pad of fat is pulled out and sutured on the fistula. Simple and quick surgical technique, relatively low rate of complications. As located in the same surgical field, risk of infection is less. Large defects cannot be closed by using buccal pad of fat. Contraction of the flap is a problem here. So now coming to the autogenous bone graft. Bone is taken from lateral wall of the antrum for closure of oroventral fistula situated in the buccal or alveolar area where bones are pedicle and periosteum, which can be advanced in required position. Buccal flap is used for soft tissue coverage. Here, basically in the previous techniques and all, we used only the soft tissue, buccal flap or pedicle flap, palatal pedicle flap, something like that. Only the soft tissue cover is used. But here, in autogenous bone graft technique, what we are using is, we are covering the fistula with a bone graft itself, and on the bone graft, we are keeping the buccal flap for soft tissue coverage. So we are using both the bone and the soft tissue also. Advantage: closure of defect using autogenous cancel bone ensures strength to the flap, replaces the defect with a similar tissue. That is the most important advantage here. So you can see the picture. So you can see the markings there, marking to take a small bone, and with the use of chisel and mallet, a small piece of bone has been harvested, and it is kept on the oroventral fistula region, and it has been secured with the screw. A buccal flap is raised again, and it has been closed. So you are closing the fistula using a bone, and on the bone you are keeping a flap also. So again, the next technique, interseptal alveolectomy. This is advocated by Deans. It's called as Deans technique. Basically, this is a pre-prosthetic procedure used to close small bony defects about 1 to 5 mm following extraction. You have to give LA. Incision is made on the alveolar crest and extended across the fistula. Using the periosteal elevators, usually the mold number 9-1, flaps are minimally elevated to permit removal of alveolar bone and to avoid damage to the tissues. The interseptal medullary bone is then removed anteriorly, posteriorly to the fistula using a burr. You can see that in the picture there. Vertical osteotomies are also performed with a fine chisel at the distal edge of the alveolar ridge and just before the anterior region of the tooth. Finger pressure, gentle finger pressure is given, which is used to fracture the buccal cortex in the direction of the palate. Basically, you are creating a green stick fracture, and you are gently pushing the buccal cortex on the palatal cortex, which facilitates the closure of the fistula there. To achieve the desired contour, it is further compressed with the fingers. Finally, sutures are placed to close the soft tissue and maintain the form of buccal contour. So basically, it is an atraumatic procedure, high success rate. Soft tissue healing is supported by bony base, does not change vestibular height. Disadvantages are: it is not suitable when alveolar ridge is extremely low. When a patient is having a very resorbed ridge, you can't do it here. When there is a little space is there between the adjacent teeth, again, it's difficult to do that. Now we have seen about soft tissue procedures, buccal flap, palatal flap, combination procedures, and closure with buccal pad of fat, and with autogenous bone we have seen, and all these procedures we have seen. Now we are seeing the alloplastic material. When you will use that, when there is when they do not require large amount of local tissue and no raw area is left behind or gland lesion following closure. Okay, when these indications are there, you can go for alloplastic materials, and lot of alloplastic materials are there. GTR, hydroxyapatite, lot of materials are all there, and basically these materials ideally they should be chemically inert. They should not cause any reactions there. Biologically it should be compatible, non-allergic they should be. It should serve as a scaffolding. It should have an osteoconductive property. It should initiate new bone growth. That is very important. Be able to undergo sterilization, function so that growth of microorganisms is not potentiated, be able to be removed if necessary with minimal injury to the recipient sites. So we have seen all the techniques, not all the techniques, the important techniques we have seen, which are described in the literature. There are a lot of techniques. So the important ones we have seen. Now we will see a small video where the oroventral fistula has occurred. This is the patient for whom fistula has been occurred because of the extraction which was done before 10 days. So we will see the problems what he has and how the closure has been done. Just a minute. Patient has been given fluid, and you can see the escape of fluid through the nose, especially through the left nostril there. See, this is the nasal reagitation. Backflow of the fluid from the sinus to the nasal cavity. So there is a communication there, which is confirmed through IOP also. So there is an haziness of the left maxillary sinus. So what the surgeon does is, after giving LA, he removes the marginal epithelium and the fistulous tract there. And you can see the freshened fistula there, and the vertical releasing incisions are being given on both the sides using the BP blade number 15. Both the sides of fistula, you can see the vertical release incision have been given. Once the incision is given, then you have to reflect the flap and advance it. The reflection is done using a periosteal elevator, mode number 9. You can use the broader end of the flap periosteal elevator, to reflect the flap. So the releasing incision have been given, the flap is reflected, but you have to advance it. So in order to facilitate the advancement, you have to score the periosteum. As you see in the video, you have to release the periosteum to facilitate the advancement. You have to check whether the buccal advancement is enough to cover the entire fistula region. If it is not enough, you have to further release the periosteum so that you can have enough advancement to facilitate the complete closure of the fistula. You can see that. See, now you are having enough advancement. Adequate flap is there. Now you can go for suturing. You can suture that advanced buccal flap on the fistulous region. So you can see that complete closure there, which will be followed by post-operative medication and instructions. So I have given a brief idea about oroventral fistula, its etiology, and how to diagnose that, various modalities of management. We have seen some important modalities of management also. Hope I think it's useful for you all. Thank you.